All right, in today's college football, this position's almost become kind of like a wide receiver, but in the SEC, we still have generally the traditional tight end, and we've got a crop here that can really play, especially, I think, the top two. So without trying to forecast these top five lists, this is what I'm looking at. We got Jamie Hancock of Preps Nation. We've got Chad Neipling of V Sporto. Also from TouchdownAlabama.net, we've got Stephen M. Smith to break down the tight ends in the SEC, and they can block and they can catch the football. They can do both. So, Jamie, let's start with you and see what you got here.
You know, when you talk about the tight ends in the SEC, like you said, it's a bit of a short position right now, at least from the numbers standpoint. And I'm starting my list at number one with Steven Scheu from Vanderbilt. I think he's the most balanced tight end of the group because he does a good job catching the football, but he's also one of the few online tight ends or possible online tight ends in the conference that can still be good in the running game. The problem is he's just with an anemic offense from the standpoint of they're not able to do a whole lot. I think they played about 4 quarterbacks last year. Tight end is a rhythm position with a quarterback. It's a comfort level. And if you can't establish a comfort level with your quarterback at the tight end position, it's very, very tough. I think overall he's the best of the bunch because he's not a specialist. He can catch the football and he can block. So he's a guy that I really think a lot of. Number two, I go to the guy that stands out the most to me on the field when you talk about statistics and just jumping out at you with his play is Evan Engram. He's a guy that's not as good in the run game, but he's very good at getting into the stat sheet and making sure that he's seen, on the field and things of that nature, and I think he does a great job of getting in the scene. Hunter Henry is a guy that could have just as easily been number one as he could be number three. I just felt like that I wanted to go with a tight end at the top that was very effective in both sides of the game, and then Evan Engram to me was the most standout when it came to the passing situation. Now Hunter Henry may jump out at you because he's one of those guys that with A.J. Derby moved on, he may have such a bigger role in Arkansas's offense that he may jump all the way to number one and be heads and tails better than the rest, just depending on what kind of relationship he can establish there. Number four, I think O.J. Howard is a guy that really fell back in his second season. He really looked so good as a freshman. I had such high expectations for him and still do. When you see him in person, he is so impressive to take a look at physically and even as a person. The guy's all smiles and good with everybody. And I think he's a guy that once he's able to establish himself with the Alabama quarterbacks this year, I think you're going to see a bigger role for O.J. Howard and the Alabama offense. And then number five, I had Jeb Blazevich at Georgia, a guy who looked really good to me as a young player in a very heavy run offense. And I think he's really going to be able to establish himself as a big play tight end for Georgia, and the way teams are going to crowd the line of scrimmage for them, I think he's going to have some opportunities to make some big plays in the passing game coming into his second season.
All right, Jamie, you surprised me with a few picks there. We'll see what Chad has and Stephen M., of course. So, Chad, what you got top five?
Yeah, this is a position that if you are in my neck of the woods up here in Arkansas, you've gotten to be really familiar with, and you have really gotten to know, how to look at the position, what the key role of it is, with Bielema's system and how the tight end is utilized. And looking across the board here, I kind of looked at it a little bit different. I like Jamie's list. I think at his number one for Steven Scheu, I don't think there was a guy that was more important to an offense than Steven Scheu, but I don't have him ranked as high. I went with Hunter Henry at one, at 6'5", 250, 37 receptions, 513 yards. The guy, in my opinion, is probably a more complete tight end, and I put it to you this way, because of the importance of his role in the run game, not just in the passing game, but also in the run game, being able to create the seal block, getting upfield and creating blocking there, but also has the ability to help spread the field. A.J. Derby was a sure-handed tight end, but if you go back and you look at the film, Henry was the guy that was probably pulling a little bit more of the weight, as it were, especially in the run game. Derby wasn't near as physical and handy as Henry is. At 2, Evan Engram. Jamie, good point, man. He's a guy that is definitely at 6'3", 227, 32 receptions, 662 yards last year. He is a guy that is really effective when you split him out in the passing game and can extremely, spread your defense out. And as you add Treadwell to that coming back this season, that's going to be really potent, whether it's Buchanan or Kelly that gets the start. This guy is going to end up being their best friend. That being said, I don't see him being as physical as some of these other guys on the list, but that's okay. It's good to have a finesse guy. Every now and again, you need somebody that can help create that mismatch against the secondary players, and that's exactly what they have in Engram. At number 3, this is a guy that I think Alabama has got to find a way to get him involved this season. He is due for a breakout year, and Kiffin has got to find a way to get O.J. Howard involved in this offense. And that's going to be the difference between him having a phenomenal year and a so-so year. 6'6", 242. The guy is an athletic beast. We've seen it. We've seen kind of glimmers of it at times during the seasons. He has the ability to not just create the seal blocks for a phenomenal rushing game that we've seen out of Alabama, but he has the ability to create the mismatch against the secondary and take these jokers home. You've seen that. And then at number 4, I put Steven Scheu, 39 receptions, 525 yards. Again, I don't think there was a guy on this list that was probably more important to his offensive unit than Steven Scheu and what Vanderbilt. They just don't have anything, and I agree with you, Jamie, 100%, man. It's just a team that doesn't have a lot going for it. But this right here is probably the bright spot on the unit. And at number 5, I'm going to throw one out here at you guys. I had an opportunity to watch him. He's gotten a couple plays this last season, but I watched him at the spring game, and if he is any bit as advertised in the spring as he is in the season, this guy is going to be set for a huge season, and that's Jeremy Sprinkle out of Arkansas. This guy had a massive spring showing, and if he is anything like that during the season, watch out for him. A couple mentions: Ethan Wolf out of Tennessee has the opportunity, if he wasn't injured as much as he was last season, he probably could have been a bigger key player for Butch Jones in that offense. And then, of course, I like Jeb out of UGA. I think out of Georgia, I think he's a guy that could have a big year too. And he really helped in that 2,000-plus yard rushing unit in the blocking. So he's a guy I think could be set up to have a big year too.
All right, Chad, for a second there, I thought you hacked into my sheet there. But through the top 4, but we kind of diverted with the second Arkansas tight end at number 5. All right, Stephen M., you got a 5-star in O.J. Howard. Where do you place him in the top 5? Let's hear your list.
Well, number 1, I got to go with Hunter Henry out of Arkansas because of the fact that not only does he excel blocking for the likes of Alex Collins and Jonathan Williams, but he really became Brandon Allen's security blanket and a quarterback in Brandon Allen who really started to put things together last season. So Hunter Henry definitely number 1. Number 2, Evan Engram out of Ole Miss. You put this guy with Laquan Treadwell and Cody Core. If Cody Core can get a little bit more consistent, you talk about a knockout receiver unit for whomever's on the center next season for the Rebels, so Evan Engram at 2. O.J. Howard at number 3 for me. Now, last season, Howard was able to learn more about becoming a better blocker from Jalston Nudie Fowler. So Jalston Fowler kind of took O.J. Howard under his wing last year as far as blocking is concerned. Now, aside from O.J. Howard, Alabama returns Brandon Green, Dakota Ball, Ty Flurney-Smith, a lot of players at that tight end position. So O.J. Howard will block at times, but more times than not, Alabama will want to use him in the slot as that vertical receiver. And as Chad mentioned, offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin has got to find ways to create opportunities for O.J. Howard in the same manner that he's going to get Kenyon Drake involved in Alabama's offense. So I have O.J. Howard at 3. Number 4, I have Steven Scheu of Vanderbilt. If the Commodores can get this guy a quarterback, he is going to be amazing this coming season and in the years to come. And at number 5, here's my wild card here. He's listed as a receiver and a tight end on 24/7 Sports. But at number 5, I got Fred Ross from Mississippi State. And this is a guy that is one of Dak Prescott's favorite receivers aside from De'Runnya Wilson. Yes, Joe Morrow is there as well and Gabe Miles, but Fred Ross at 6'3" is one of those guys that Dak Prescott loves to get the ball to in open space and also in red zone situations.
All right, Stephen M. Good list with Mississippi State kicking in with Fred Ross at number 5. So I really got nothing to add in terms of any kind of wild card or crazy picks or anything because I've got Henry 1, Engram 2, Howard 3, Blazevich 4, and Scheu 5. Just a few points on each one of these guys. Hunter Henry really found himself with the offense later in the season. Of course, he had the big freshman season, so there was no question about him, but it was Brandon Allen's play and then opening up the passing game because he only had 4 receptions the first 4 games, 2014, and then he averaged 4 catches per game the rest of the season. Better inline blocker than my number 2 guy, as you guys mentioned, Evan Engram, coming into his senior season at Ole Miss. I think this is really distinguishes his playmaking ability in the passing game compared to most tight ends. There were 4, maybe 5 100-yard games turned in by tight ends in 2014. He had 2 huge games against Auburn and Mississippi State, so 2 of the biggest games that Ole Miss played all year. 8 for 118 against the Tigers, 5 for 176 in the Egg Bowl. That was the 4th best, not tight end, but receiving yardage statistic in Ole Miss history, that coming in the Egg Bowl and the upset win. This kid, I think the stat that really jumps out, averaged almost 18 yards a catch. That's wide receiver numbers. That's good wide receiver numbers. Evan Engram, 17.5 yards per catch. So he really produced against the better teams, and this is going to be big for Ole Miss, as we've talked about in the past during other video segments with the question mark at quarterback, whether it's Kelly, Buchanan, or Kincaid. They're going to really have to rely on a guy that really knows route running and has great hands like Evan Engram. I got O.J. Howard out of Bama at number 3. No catches the first 4 games of the season. Then he made a comment after game 4 that he really, needed to attack the routes, attack the football. We saw an example of that when Senquez Golson out high-pointed him for the football when he could have wrestled that thing away for the game-winning touchdown in Oxford. He's a 5-star. He's got all the talent in the world, caught 17 last year. Expect big things out of him, especially with Bama's 3 top wide receivers out of the mix this season. They could rely more on O.J. In 2015. Jeb Blazevich, we talked about his talent coming out of Charlotte as a 4-star recruit, just in a freshman season, catching 18 passes. Chris Conley made this. We saw Chris Conley freak out at the NFL Combine. Well, he made this comment about Jeb Blazevich. He said basically he's going to be great. Mark Richt says the kid never makes mistakes. He knows his position, great technique, never makes the same mistake twice, smart and instinctive. And then at number 5, Steven Scheu, suffering there in Nashville with the Vanderbilt Commodores in the revolving door at quarterback, still caught 37 passes last season. So he is a playmaker. And let's not forget Jarrell Adams, who will be South Carolina's starting tight end, took over for the injured Rory Anderson last year. And Mama calls him strong. That's why she called him Jarrell. He's strong. That's what it means. So give some love to the Gamecocks and Jarrell Anderson as well. So Jarrell Adams, excuse me. So any other thoughts about anybody else possibly under the radar?
Hey, Mark, the thing I want to point out about Evan Engram, he pointed out the 2 games in Auburn and Mississippi State, and you have to keep in mind during those 2 games, that's the game that Treadwell went down and got hurt. And then he turned around and ended up becoming the weapon that they had to use. And also in the Mississippi State game, Treadwell wasn't there either. That being said, Treadwell coming back this season, watch out. That's going to be a hefty duo in the passing game, depending on who gets to start, Kelly or Buchanan. That's going to be a big one.
All right, gentlemen, we all set on the tight end position. Looks like it. All right, very good. We got Jamie Hancock, Preps Nation, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, and Chad Neipling of B Sporto talking tight end position in the SEC. All right, gentlemen, we'll catch you next time. Always appreciate it.
No problem.